So I'm an Impact Certified Mastermind Coach, and I work with Impact Coaching and Consulting out of Conway to do women's life coaching. My kind of niche is busy working moms because that's the life that I've lived, and that is really where I feel like God has called me to just speak life into that community of women, right? To give them a safe place to be vulnerable about how hard it is and how isolating it can be sometimes. Personally, working with a coach was life-changing for me. And when Selena Ulaswich asked me to join her team as a coach, it was like I knew in my spirit immediately that this was something that that God had given me the ability to do, and this was a great platform to use. It's like as a ministry is really what it is.
Cool. What do you think kind of drove you to work with, like, you wanted to niche down into like the working moms?
I think because that is the life that I know, right? I mean, my testimony is long and complicated, but
We got all day, so.
well,
We don't have a time cap.
well, okay. I was a young mother and working in the corporate world, and I loved what I did. I mean, and I was good at it. And it came much more naturally to me than being a mom did, honestly, which really threw me for a loop because I just didn't expect that I would take more naturally to work than I did to being a mother. And it took me a lot of years as a mother and finally working with a coach to realize several things. First of all, that you can be a great mom and enjoy some seasons more than others, right? Redefining what being a, quote, good mom looks like. And just the whole concept of you get to define success in different areas of your life was huge for me, right? I mean, I'm not the mother that my mom was. I don't like to play. And elementary school field trips are not where God gifted me as a mother. That doesn't mean I'm a bad mom, right? And I dealt with sort of that guilt and that shame and all of these things I thought I should be doing, this person I thought I should be that I just wasn't for years. And working with a coach helped me redefine what I really want to be, the things that really matter to me as a parent, and the things that are just the world telling me, oh, this is what you should do. This is what good moms do. When in reality, that's really ridiculous, right? Who cares if I can make pretty cupcakes or not? That's a Pinterest thing. That's not a biblical thing.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with...
Don't tell Jessica.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do...
I'll spread the word to Jessica.
Does she need that word right now, or is this breaking news?
Well, she makes a lot of cupcakes.
He eats all the wrappers. So.
All right. So I worked through that with a coach, and in the process of just that kind of figuring out who I was as a mother, I started realizing that this job that I loved for a long time, I didn't quite love it so much anymore. It had changed, and it wasn't that I wasn't doing the job well anymore, but the season of my life changed. And I was traveling a lot, and my husband travels for his job, and that just wasn't what we, wanted for our kids. And so figuring out that I wanted to do something different was honestly a really tough process because it was almost like I was grieving what I thought was going to be forever, what I thought was my dream, and realizing that it wasn't going to be forever and that I maybe wanted to do something different, and that didn't mean that what I had been doing for 10 years was a waste.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so figuring out what I wanted to do next, I stepped out of the corporate world, quit my job with no plan, and started a consulting firm. I've been doing that full-time for 6 years now, and I absolutely love it. But just that whole process, right, of working through scary decisions, of deciding, okay, for the next 10 or 12 years when I still have children at home, what is most important for my family? And sort of just defining like that season of our life and getting really brutally honest with myself about when I'm gone, what kind of legacy do I want to have left? What kind of mother do I want my children to say that I was?
Yeah.
working with a coach for all of that was really, really huge for me. So when my coach said, hey, what would you think about joining my consulting firm, joining my team, and starting to do for other women what we've done together? I was like, yes. No hesitation whatsoever. I mean, the only other time I can remember being like that confident in a yes was when Brian asked me to marry him, right?
I would not have been that confident if Brian asked me to marry him.
Oh yeah, because that's gay.
But I mean, truly,
Edit that.
Sorry.
it felt like it was meant to be. It was just a very natural yes, and
Yeah.
I am absolutely loving it.
Cool.
That's awesome.
I told you that was a really long story.
Yeah.
Hey,
no, that was
that
really
was
good.
awesome. Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I have this conversation with Jessica a lot about her idea of career and being in the place that she's at right now and kind of where she wants to be. What, like, advice do you have for people that not necessarily aren't scared of making that jump, but either being prepared for that jump of going to the next level or chapter of your life or anything like that? Like, what advice do you have for those people that have that in their mind but not ready to take it just yet?
I think that's a great question, and I think we could probably do a whole episode on that. A couple of things come to mind. The first is that it's never going to not be scary. So I think if you have in your head that you're going to get to a point where you're not nervous at all, or you have absolute certainty, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Because you're always going to be a little bit hesitant. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. There's this really kind of catchy saying that you see on Pinterest or Instagram, like that faith and fear can't exist in the same place. And I absolutely don't believe that. I think if you don't have fear, you don't need faith.
I like
So
that, yeah.
just being real and honest that it's okay if you're nervous and acknowledging that up front, I think is helpful. For me, when I was leaving one job and didn't know what the next one was going to look like, it was really helpful for me to start listing out the things I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Because that helped me narrow down different choices or opportunities that would come my way. And I would look at it and, I wanted something, just to have something.
Yeah.
And working with Selena gave me the confidence to say, okay, but you've actually said these things are the most important. And this is what you didn't want. How does this new opportunity line up with the things that you have said are either really important, or the things that are really important to have, or the things that are really important not to have, right? And sometimes when you don't know what you want, you can narrow that down by identifying what you definitely don't want.
Right. So I've done the men's mastermind, and we've done one-on-one coaching with Selena. I've done it personally, and me and Chrissy have done it for Empire as well. And so I do see that there's value in like the coaching, and sometimes you don't even know what you're asking, and then it's like untangling this knot of just like chaos when you're a business owner of like there's a million tasks, and having an outside party to go, let's focus on this spot first and then unwind that, and just like there's just so much to it. And then you throw in being a mom, and that me and Chrissy have this conversation like probably twice a week. There's this internal struggle with her within like wanting the business to thrive, but also wanting to be a present mom, and like this push-pull between both of them. And of just like, she doesn't want to pull back on the business, but she doesn't want to give up any time with Willow. And so I do see there's a lot of value in the coaching just for anyone, but especially women business owners that are mothers as well.
Yeah. It's not easy.
Right.
And sometimes we don't acknowledge that, or we feel like it shouldn't be a struggle. You hear a lot about work-life balance.
Yeah.
And as a mom, immediately in your head you think, okay, work is work, and then life is how I am at home and as a mother. And at Impact, we actually prefer the word harmony over balance, just the the mental picture of balance is like that. It's always off balance,
Yeah.
right? It's a bit of a negative connotation, whereas harmony is more of working together. And you get this sense that on a given day or in a given week or month, it's going to, tip one way or the other. But overall, they should be working together so that you can give your kids the life that you want them to have. That's kind of the work part of it, right? But then also model for them the character traits that you want them to see you have.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I've heard it a lot, like where people talk about like kids they don't care about you like making more money or whatever. They want that more time with you. But like I guess for everyone, there's that line is different of like how much is enough and how much time with the family. And I think working with a coach could help you kind of figure out where that line is for like in a healthy place. And so I think that's a really cool thing that you offer that a lot of people need and they don't even realize they need. And so,
because I think everyone gets so caught up in work and having to either provide or get to a point where it's like, well, if I'm working now and I work hard now, then everything will come later. And you do lose a lot of precious time with that whenever you're so focused on this aspect of your life where you have to find the harmony or anything like that to be able to take a step back and know that it will be okay, that I am working hard, but I can kind of peel back to feed back into my family as well, too.
Yeah, and I think acknowledging that your current season is not your forever season, right? Whether it's in this particular role at work, right? Or a particular age range that your kid is, or even like quite literally a season like it's baseball season or it's tax prep season or whatever it might be that is a season for you, acknowledging that the seasons are different and your availability, both emotionally and physically, to be physically present, but also to be like emotionally supportive and compassionate and all of those things, that's going to vary with the season. And we tend to forget that because we just get so like in the weeds of our day to day, have to get all the things done and be all the places and, make sure everyone eats and keep the kids alive and those everyday things. We lose sight of the fact that this is just a season.
Right.
And so, taking that concept, right, taking the time to do that, I call it the mental work of like, what season am I in right now and what's most important in this season is helpful because a lot of times you realize that, okay, I'm not actually as overwhelmed as I thought I was because this isn't forever.
right.
There's a finite end to when this kind of chaos is going to stop. It also helps you say, all right, this is what's most important right now.
Yeah.
And I understand that this is a short, defined period of time. So I may not be able to give as much attention here as I want to. But it's because I'm choosing to prioritize these other things for right now.
Yeah.
I feel like that even on the flip side has helped me stay like grateful. It was like even when the good seasons, like they're not forever. It's still going to have some hard times. So being more grateful in those good seasons and whenever it's hard, you can go, okay, this is going to pass as well. I have a question as far as like the coaching goes. Like I said, I've walked through it and Selena was very clear that it wasn't therapy, even though I tried to push that a little bit.
I think everyone does. It's just natural.
So like, what task can we like work through together to like accomplish? Like, is it just business, like life? Like, what kind of things are you here to help with?
So that is a great question. And the answer is really whatever the client wants. So I'm going to be working with Chrissy and the coaches at Empire and the clients here to do some really cool things in 2025. But just because I'm associated with Empire, partnered with Empire to help them with their fitness goals, if they come to a session and they need to work on a situation at work, or they need to talk through something that's happening within their home, within their schedule. The client decides what the session is going to be focused on. It's very much, I'm here to serve and to help you get clarity, right? I have clients that come in and they are really hopeful that I'm just going to give them a list of things like do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm going to tell them exactly what to do to, quote, get their life together. And that's not how it works, right? My job isn't to tell you what to do. My job is to ask the right questions to help you understand what's important and what you want to do differently. And then to gently hold you accountable, right? To say, okay, last time we chatted, you said this was the most important thing. And now you're telling me this. Those aren't matching up. What's going on, right? I'm not going to call you out. But when your actions don't align with what you've said is important or what you've said your goal is, having somebody to ask you questions about that compassionately, without judgment, is really illuminating.
And the accountability aspect of it, of like, if you set this goal, you're like, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish this next month. And then I know that I'm going to have to sit down in front of you again in that following month. And if I don't actually implement those things, it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's very similar to training. It's like, hey, we need you to be down a pound or whatever that goal is. And if you're not adhering to it, you do have someone to kind of face and answer to.
Yeah, especially whenever it's very goal driven and people, like you said, come in and the goals aren't matching up because they're either changing it too much or whatever they're doing to jump from goal to goal, being able to have someone there to hone in and be like, well, no, this was what we've been trying to accomplish, and what's the reasoning that we're trying to change it now? It's the same thing with fitness is if you have a certain goal and you try to change it week to week, what goal is going to be reached? So,
yeah, and actually goals, like strategy, is one of my favorite things to do because I'm just a very goal-oriented person. I'm an Enneagram 3, and I love to-do lists and deadlines and goals, and I am a nerd. But I think something that is unique for Impact is our goals strategy sessions, where we will talk you through and help you get clarity on what are the milestones, right? Let's break this big goal that you have down into baby steps, and then it's measurable, right? And then you can see those incremental progress. But then also looking at, and we actually have a little worksheet, like we can write this down so that you have it and you can look at it, but saying, okay, what could go wrong? Because real life, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
If you're working on a fitness goal and you're trying to eat clean and show up at the gym, you're going to get sick. Or your kid's going to get sick. Or you're going to get a flat tire on the way to the, and so how are you going to work around that? And knowing ahead of time, like, this is what potentially could go wrong. And this is how I'm going to overcome it and get back on track, right?
Yeah.
And then also just being really brutally honest about, okay, what resources do I need? And what habits do I need to either like break or build to support this goal? Having those things thought through ahead of time is so helpful, because then when real life happens, you don't feel like you failed.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to get back on track.
Yeah.
I love that. I do, because like I tend to just be fixated on the end goal, and that's something I've kind of been working through this past year, of like just loving the process of things instead of just being like, I've got to get to this place. And then you get there and you're just like, okay, well, now what? Or you don't get there and then you feel like you suck.
Yeah.
But
That part.
yeah.
That it's always tough too, because with goals, it's like what's tough, and I've found with some people, and you might be a little bit like this, or sometimes I am too, is as soon as it stops going perfect, you're very off track and you're like, wait, what just happened? And you don't really know how to get back on track. And so I've really tried to start setting expectations and understanding that life can happen, and being able to mitigate and be prepared for when those things happen through goals helps so much, instead of, oh, I had one day of of whatever. Like just on this past week, I got back from my honeymoon, and I tried to eat as well as I could and stayed on track.
Nice.
Well, whatever, Jacob. But at the same time, it's also the honeymoon. We're going to have those expectations of we want to go out to fancy dinners and stuff like that. And knowing that as soon as those speed bumps happen, the goal's not done. It just happens and you get back on track.
So that's a kind of a good question that I have as far as like setting goals. One of the topics I had kind of thought about was like goal fatigue of like, there's like an infinite amount of goals you can set within like fitness or finances or just life and kids and business. And it's like, how do you just not, what's a good tip to not get overwhelmed by just like having to perpetually just trying to meet these goals all the time and just feeling like you're never quite getting there?
Well, and I mean, that's what everyone does like January 1, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Is
true.
They have a laundry list of New Year's resolutions, like they're going to somehow overnight become a completely different person. So one of the ways that we encourage clients to stick with their goals is to not pick more than 3 or 4 at any one time, right? And we have different strategies and different tools that we can use to help you narrow down which ones to pick now based on, you know, what your values are, what roles you're sort of giving most of your energy to in this season, and making sure that's aligned with your goals. And the other piece of that I really love is accountability and encouragement. So we have the ability as coaches to, like I said, hold you accountable. And I think a mistake that people make with goals and something that turns into sort of that overwhelm and that goal fatigue like you're talking about is that they try to do it alone. And they don't have anybody that is like jumping up and down doing a happy dance for them when they make a tiny little step forward in progress, right? And they also don't have anybody to nicely help them get back on track as opposed to just judgment. This may sound terrible, but sometimes your spouse is not the best accountability partner. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I've been married 20 years, and my husband is incredibly supportive. But his way of motivating me is not always what I need.
Yeah.
Right? It isn't always the language that it's not the love language that I maybe need in that moment. He's not wrong, but it's just not necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
And so having somebody that's not your spouse, but that's also not your friend or your mom or your sister, you know, somebody you know that isn't just going to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
Is really helpful. And also doing in community. We do a lot of group, you know, masterminds. We do some group coaching things, and just having a group of people, even if you're working on different goals. But when you have a group of people, you know, 5 to 7 that are all working on something that's important to them, that they feel like makes them more close to the person they were created to be, like, just seeing them have a little bit of success is so motivating for you to keep doing what it is that you yourself are called to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, because we've talked about that before, of where whenever you're able to kind of center yourself around people that are like-minded or goal-oriented, it helps you stay on track and reach those goals better than, say, a different group of people that either don't care about your goal or don't care that you're changing or are questioning why you're trying to change. It will take you off track. So having that community and like-minded people around you and to celebrate those wins is really important to have.
Right. And
Huge.
I do think sometimes, like you said, like your spouse, sometimes it's too close and you don't, they know the things that you struggle with. And when they call it out, you don't want to hear it. Chrissy does that all the time to me. And then I'll like watch a podcast and be like, oh, I need to start doing this. She's like, I've been telling you that. And
Man,
I'm like,
when you get caught with that, you're like, oh
like,
my,
you're
why did I
right.
do that?
But here's the other thing, too, on the flip side, right, is that you can have a spouse that is really great about communicating support and accountability to you. But when they see you every single day and you're making really small changes, they may not notice the changes as opposed to somebody that sees you every couple of weeks or talks to you, you know, once a week, once a month. They're going to see those subtle shifts
Right. Yeah.
more so than somebody that's really, really close like that. And they'll be able to then point those out to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really exciting and rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And I think just having that unbiased like third party to be able to like, you just have a different level of like, not, it's like you respect the people that are close to you, but it is like a different kind of respect. You're like, there's some walls that you're not going to cross.
Yeah.
Just because there's not been like that relationship built
Right.
to a certain extent that you're just going to listen a little bit better. But you talked about the mastermind too. It's like having that community of people that are all striving towards similar things and they're like-minded people. It's like, I think it was in church this morning they talked about, it said the cure for addiction is community.
Yeah.
It's like when you have people around you that are going to the same place, that's really powerful versus being alone. And like, that's where you struggle and you kind of give up.
Yeah. Who you say you are and who you say you want to be are two totally different things. And when you can finally like get that to be the same, it's like magical, right? Like angels singing. And I'll give you an example. So I have been working with Chrissy for a little over 18 months. And I had a very specific goal where I wanted a certain aesthetic. I wanted abs, finally. Like, come on, I've got 2 kids. My youngest is 12. Like, it's time. But I had this very specific goal. And I had been working on certain fitness goal for several years prior to that. And finally got to where I wanted to be, or really, really close, after working with Chrissy. But this year, as I was making my goals for 2025, I realized I didn't have a fitness goal on my list of goals. And it's not that I no longer care about, how I look, what my muscle mass is, that kind of thing. It's not that I don't care about fitness anymore. It's that it's become a part of who I am. And I don't have to set a goal to make myself do it or focus on it, right? And so I think doing things in a way that it's sustainable and, realistic, and where your expectation matches the energy that you have or that you're willing to put into it is important for making that something that's real. And it's part of who you are, right? It becomes part of your identity as opposed to something that you just, I guess, want to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's like that also cures the decision fatigue that we talked about ahead of time. Because if it's just who you are, you're not even chasing a goal. It's just something you do because it's who you identify as.
Yes.
I say this all the time about fitness as like, you don't have to be motivated. It should be like brushing your teeth. Like, you don't brush your teeth because you're motivated to brush your teeth. You brush it because you're a clean person. And so it's just like what you do. And so like, if you're like, I just work out because it's part of my day and that's who I am. It's like, it doesn't fatigue you on trying to reach a goal because it's just part of your life.
Right.
And so it's the same thing. Like, that's a part of Atomic Habits, which is what I bring up a lot of times, of like the smoker and saying,
Great book.
Yeah. And he uses the analogy of saying, no, I'm trying to quit smoking versus no, I'm not a smoker. And the person that says they're not a smoker is obviously going to be the more successful in not smoking.
Right. It's you start making decisions as if you are already that person.
Right.
Right. If your goal is to be a healthy person, then rather than focusing on all of the changes that you need to make, you can say, okay, what would a healthy person do? Probably not eat Arby's cheese sticks, which are the best. But they would probably not eat those for lunch, twice a week.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make decisions as if I've already become that person and with the mindset of this is who I am.
Yeah.
But I think being realistic and reasonable about the fact that you're not going to become a totally different person overnight.
Yeah.
Right.
And that even the healthiest people probably have
Some days.
Something.
Sometimes I
No one's
eat Arby's.
perfect 100%.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I don't think everybody eats Arby's. I don't
Well,
remember the last time I ate Arby's.
I don't either.
So I've been reading a book recently. It's called The Plan by Kendra Adachi, and she talks in the book about a lot of things. It's a fantastic book. But one of the things she talks about is mastery, right? And that we don't necessarily have to have a goal to master anything, right? We can pick a level of good enough that works for us. And I think that is, for me, it's really comforting, especially when it comes to food, because I really like food.
Yeah.
And I really like all the foods that do not align with my health goals, okay? But knowing that I don't have to be perfect, I don't have to be like a complete and total master and only eat the healthiest options all of the time is really comforting. And honestly, it feels a lot more attainable.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to be perfect is exhausting, and I think
Not if you're perfect.
well, I guess that's true. But also at the same time, if you're trying to be perfect, as soon as you go off track a little bit, you really go off track. And I think I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but you have this envision in mind of like either what someone else would do or a comparison to what you think someone is who is on top of it is. And as soon as something goes off the rails, because no one online or no one that you look up to ever shows those more vulnerable times that you kind of see that perfection at. And as soon as you go off track, it's like, how do I, like, well, now what's even the point? And so perfectism,
Perfectionism.
is really exhausting.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of setting like minimums. Like, so like you can have like this standard of like, this is what a perfect workout would look like. But so every day is not going to be perfect. So,
Right.
but you can say, but I'm at least going to go for a walk, or like there's a minimum that you're not
Yeah.
going to concede to.
Yeah.
So it's like, I might not have an hour to commit to a workout today, but I'm going to come in for 20 minutes and do what I can.
Yeah, and something really similar that was really helpful for me when I first started working out with Chrissy, and she was like, "Okay, we gotta address your diet because it was embarrassing, the crap that I would eat."
I believe it's all Brian's fault, actually.
I don't know that he can take all the blame on that, but I started by saying like, okay, instead of feeling this pressure to make the best decision, what if I just made a better decision than what I would have made last week? Right? And so starting with that, kind of like in Atomic Habits, where you just start slow and you're making very small incremental changes. But instead of feeling the like weight of, okay, I've got to make the best choice of all the choices possible, how about I just do better than I was before?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's good with those type of just little better befores add up so much to then like a week or two or 6 months later, now all those betters have become the best choice. And so you fix these habits little by little and then really grow into that where you're like, oh, I don't even have to think about these choices anymore because those are the choices I make now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't remember where I saw this, but it was just saying that like you're essentially a reflection of your daily habits of everything you do consistently. And so if you can just do those small things, they add up over time. And then there's a book, I think I've read, I don't know, I think it's Chop Wood, Carry Water, where it talks about like in high school, like when you graduate high school, you start basically on a level playing field with everyone else. But in 10 years, everyone's in like drastically different places. And there wasn't like one thing that anyone did. It was just the small things that they did every single day that led them in very different places. And so it was mainly just to get the point across of like getting that extremism out of your mind of like, I've got to do something drastic to reach this goal. It's like, if you give yourself an adequate amount of time, you'll reach it with small incremental changes.
Right.
And those are going to actually be the lasting changes that work, because if you do something extreme, it's probably not sustainable, and then you actually are going to probably go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that you have kind of talked about, like in the impact coaching kind of stands for, but we also here is like, let's make changes that you're not going to be back at square one in a few years and like starting over. We want to make things that you're going to carry this with you through life, and it's going to take, in that 10 years, you should be in a very different place.
Yeah. And you should be able to learn from everything too. It's not, we're just giving you a plan and you just have to stick to it for the rest of your life. Like we should be actively learning and actively knowing what these changes are. And then at some point in our life, we are at a point where we don't need as much coaching as we might have needed in the past or anything like that, but we've gotten these habits, gotten to a point in life where we grow so much from it, and we are the person that we were striving to be.
Of course, then right about that time is usually when like the season of your life changes.
Oh, and then
you're like,
yeah,
okay, how do I pivot now
Yeah.
and take what I've learned and who I've become and then apply it to this sort of next, which is really, tricky,
yeah. I
but
think,
also like really real.
yeah,
And just, that's how it's, we have this picture in our head that we're going to be able to sort of create like our ideal day or week and then just relive it for forever.
yeah,
And we'll have a system in place, we'll have a schedule or a habit or something that's working great for a while. And then all of a sudden it stops working and we immediately think it's like, oh crap. Well, I must have didn't try hard enough or I wasn't disciplined enough, right? It's always our fault. And we don't sometimes, again, because we're so in the weeds, we don't zoom out and sort of look at our life and go, oh, well, these 3 circumstances changed and that's pretty major.
yeah.
And so the amount of time and energy that I have to devote to this is now different. So it's not that I screwed up. It's that my circumstances changed and now I need to adjust my expectations, maybe tweak my schedule a little bit. And that's where having a coach that isn't there with you every single day, but sees you regularly enough,
Right.
can be super beneficial to say, okay, well, that's actually different. When we said we were going to do this and it was working great, this is what, the other parts of your life looked like. This is what was going on. And now you've got this going.
Yeah.
Right.
What was the question that I had? It was to do with identity, and I guess it's more of that like imposter syndrome, because as soon as I feel like sometimes whenever you get to the person that you are striving or those habits that you're trying to change, you also kind of start acting a little bit different, and you sometimes don't know how to deal with it. So how do you approach that kind of imposter syndrome or that change in people that how do you deal with that, or how do you guys approach that?
How do we approach imposter syndrome?
Yeah, and just like that point in time where you're like, oh, I have changed, and then it's like you kind of freak out from that change too, I guess.
Well, we celebrate. It's the first thing we do, right? We celebrate all the little wins along the way. And I think something that is unique to Impact in this area is that we approach those things very prayerfully, right? So I have quarterly sessions with clients where we look at their goals for the year. And the first thing we do in those sessions is like pray over.
That's awesome.
Is this still what I need to be doing? Is what's working, what isn't working, what is God trying to teach me through this? And so imposter syndrome, again, it's fear, right? And we feel like you can't have, that if you have fear, then you don't have enough faith. And so that's one of my favorite ways to just sort of speak life into people is when imposter syndrome creeps up, because it's so normal, and it's also so clearly not of God. That it's easy to call that out for what it is. I'm not saying it's easy to overcome that, right? And I'm not saying that at all, because it can be very hard. But being able to look at what you've said matters, having put in the mental work to talk through and think through why that change is important and how it's going to impact your life, then when you get there and you can actually look back at what you said and go, is this true? Because sometimes it's better, you know what I mean? And it's more profound. And sometimes we realize that maybe isn't actually the end goal.
Yeah.
That at the time, that was as far in the future as we could see, was to this point, but it sort of is the birth of a bigger goal or just the next step.
Right. I want to get your perspective on this. And so, like, my initial thought would be the cure to imposter syndrome is, like, purpose. And so, like, if you have a purpose on, like, why you're doing something, like, it doesn't matter if you're not there yet. And so, like, you're like, I'm put on this earth to do this thing.
Yeah.
And you will get better over time. I think that's like an important part. And I know that when we worked with Selena, is like having like a mission statement for your business or even your life of like, this is why I'm on earth to impact these people in this kind of way. It kind of does take away this like, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Not that it's going to ever go away fully, but it definitely will minimize that.
Yeah, totally agree.
I would like to hear more about maybe like establishing those kind of things within coaching as far as like purpose and meaning and like the deeper parts of that.
Yeah. We have a workshop. It's called Design Your Life Workshop that has several different sessions. And the way we kind of approach that is to look at, first of all, values, right? So identifying your core values, because you can have 100 things that are important to you, but they can't all be the most important. And there's not a right or a wrong answer here. It's just narrowing down. If I had to say like these 4 things, if somebody only got 4 words to describe me at the end of my life, these are the things that I want them to say that I was really good at, or that character traits that I lived out. So getting really clear about what your values are. Right. Then we go to roles. So, for me, it's mother. I'm a consultant. I'm a coach. I'm a wife. There's all these roles. And really, for moms, we break it down even further, right? Because mom is like 1,000 roles. It's chauffeur and cook and nurse and, emotional support pillow and, 1,000 different things, right? The wiper of the noses and the worrier over the teenage driver. It's so many different things, but figuring out sort of like in this season, what are the 3 to 5 most important and how do those align with my values? And so getting those 2 things ironed out, then we look at the definition of success and then see how that lines up with our values. And then from there, you can basically create, like you're talking about, a mission statement for your life. And I have taught that Design Your Life workshop several times. I've gone through it myself. And I will tell you that mission statement part was extremely hard for me. And I didn't do it for like 3 years because it terrified me a little bit. Because I'm like, oh, I have to write like a short little paragraph that's going to basically say, this is who I want to be. And I just felt a lot of pressure for it to be perfect and exactly right. And
that's what a 3 would do.
What?
That's what an Enneagram 3 would do.
Yeah, right. I mean, the 3-est 3 that ever 3'd, which is a very 3 statement to make. But it is really empowering to put down who you want to be, right? And not what you want to be or what you want to do, but who you want to be. And that's really the difference in that imposter syndrome, right? Is because who you want to be is not a destination, right? It's not like a finite goal or an accomplishment that then you can check the box and be like, okay, I'm done with that. What's next, right? Yeah. It is a constant pursuit to be more like the person you feel like God created you to be. And so that's, I guess, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That's really how we approach the idea of those sort of long-term big picture goals.
So I read another book called Build the Life You Want by Arthur Brooks. And he talks about like, the whole book's about finding happiness. And it talked about like we were talking about purpose and meaning. And like, he's like, the 2 questions you need to answer is like, why are you put on this earth? Like, what are you meant to do? And then, like, what are you willing to, like, stop living for? Like, and those are the things you need to answer to be able to do that. And I think that kind of correlates with what you were saying within, like, it's not, like, your mission statement isn't a goal, but it's, like, it's a way of life that you're trying to live more than just, like, I don't think you reach a place where you meet that mission statement if it's done right. Is that correct?
I feel like that would be
Yeah.
correct. I mean, Becca, you would be the one to.
Yeah. It's like you're not right. And it's not like, well, I'm going to be like being a great dad or mom. It's like you don't cross a finish line where like there's not like these metrics that you hit to be that.
Yeah, you don't stop being a parent when you know
Right.
when your kid turns 18 and they
Right.
move
I
out of
did
the
it.
house.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. See ya.
Clock out.
I mean, thank God that's not how that
Right.
works, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I have a 16-year-old, and
Well,
the
the time's click.
Yeah,
time's
2 more
ticking.
years.
the thought of him being gone when he
Yeah.
is 18 is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think he's not really gone, right? I mean, some of the most profound things that I've learned from my parents, I've learned from them as an adult.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so there's still huge opportunity there. So yeah, you don't just check the box.
Right.
I will be a mother for as long as there's breath in my lungs.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Man, there's something.
What are some other types of things that you help your clients tackle past just like career and family?
All right. So time management is
Yeah.
huge for me. And I practice and try to help my clients practice the concept of compassionate time management, right? Where we're being just very kind to ourselves about how we spend our time, how much we can actually accomplish. So time management is huge, right? Especially for working moms, because there's so much to do. Goal setting and planning, the strategy and accountability. Also figuring out changes is something that I help a lot of clients with, whether it's they want a different role at their current job or they want a different, job altogether. I've worked with clients that want to transform their health, right? Some of what I'm going to be helping some impact clients or Empire clients do coming up is just strategy and talking through that and how to make that part of your daily life. The roles and values and defining success is also something that a lot of us need help with. And I know this is true for me personally, and I hear this feedback from a lot of clients as well, is that we just get busy, right? And we're always doing the next thing and trying to climb the corporate ladder, check all the boxes, whatever it is, but we don't actually take the time to sit down and think about, okay, what am I good at? What do I really enjoy doing? What do I not enjoy doing, what do I want to be doing with my time and my one life on this planet? And so taking the time to just sit down and think through those questions and be sort of introspective is something I do a lot of.
As far as like, it sounds like these kind of go hand in hand, like time management and like priority setting. And so like, would you say that's something that you do too? Is like maybe like priority management of like, man, I waste a lot of time doing these things that are not even that important to me.
Yes.
And so like, what would that look like?
Oh, that's so good. So we created a matrix. It's very similar to the Eisenhower matrix that goes through urgency and importance.
Oh, I know this
Right.
one.
You know
I'm a
this one.
quad 4 all day.
So you've got the 4 quadrants, right? You have these things that are really important, but they're not urgent. You have things that are really urgent, but they're not important. We call those other people's emergencies, right? And then you have things that are not urgent, but they are important, right? It's not necessarily time sensitive, but this is really something that matters. And then you have the things that are neither, right? And that's just like those everyday fluff that will wind up dominating your time and distracting you from what you actually want to be doing. And so when I have clients that are overwhelmed, they will come to me and say, I don't know where to start, right? I want to do this and I want to do this, but I have all these other things. We'll pull out that quadrant and we say, okay, all the things, let's put it in a quadrant and figure out, what is dominating our time. And that's always really fun because it's really illuminating. And they get really excited. They, being the clients, get really excited when they can move something basically down on their priority list, because they're like, I'm acknowledging that this is neither urgent nor important to me, but it is stressing me out because it's on the list.
Man, y'all should do a course on just like how to escape quadrant 4, because I feel like most people perpetually live in that one. That like feels, I know for me personally, that quadrant 4 stuff is what fills up most of my time. It's like, this isn't that important or urgent, but I'm like wasting 3 hours on it.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I get that. I'm always where everything that is important stresses me out, where I'm just like, I'm going to do it later and not worry about it. But that always makes me worry about it way more. And then whenever I do it, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, well, why did I wait so long to do that? And
sounds like you need a coach.
I probably do need a coach.
Yeah.
I know.
Because there's things that you need to just remove from the list, right?
Yeah.
You just don't, it's sometimes it's those quadrant 4 things. But then there are things that you need to say, okay, this is important and it's not urgent, but it keeps getting shuffled down on the priority list by things that are more urgent. They may not be more important, but they're more urgent.
Yeah.
So how can I sort of bump this up on the priority list?
Yeah.
Those are the things that you have to schedule. And so work with clients and actually pull out their calendar, whether it's a paper planner or happy planner, or like I use Google Calendar. But we say, okay, where are we going to fit time in your schedule to actually work on this?
Yeah. I know I drive Jessica crazy with, I'll do it later. Don't worry, I got it. And she hates
Luke's
that.
doing it later means never. He's been telling me for 7 years he's going to clean his car out.
Well, okay, it did get cleaned out.
Jessica cleaned his car
Jessica
out.
may have cleaned it out, but it wasn't a high priority thing. I was okay with it.
See, it was important but not urgent, so it kept getting put down.
What I heard was it was important to you. Luke didn't care.
Well, for our friendship, because he couldn't even, nobody could ride with him. Like his car door wouldn't open because it was full of trash.
Okay. The door could open.
Somebody sit in that seat?
Well, no, but.
Okay, but this is a funny example. And I know that you're being facetious. But how many times do our schedules and our brains get cluttered with things that other people have told us are important?
That is fair. I think that's how I get more overwhelmed, is because it's like I know I need to do it, but then everyone else telling me that I need to do it just floods me, where I'm just like, I'm not doing it at all now.
For 7 years.
I do an annual clean out, all right?
You're doing better than me. But I mean, and again, I know that y'all are joking, although I have heard more than one person say something about your car. Have you met my husband?
Well,
because he uses his front floorboard on the passenger side as a trash can.
Well, yeah.
Luke uses the rest of his car, though.
Yeah.
It's a landfill, not a floorboard.
That's
It would
hilarious.
not pass a eco test in California or something.
But there are things that sound like they should be important. They sound like they should matter because they're societal norms, and they're the responsible thing to do. Having a decently clean car is the responsible thing to do.
Or being able to pick your friends up in an emergency.
Well, I'll just use your car.
Listen, failure to plan on your part should not constitute an emergency on Luke's part. I'm just saying.
Fine.
I'm kidding. But having clarity and having somebody say, okay, this you've said you were going to do, but you keep pushing it off. Why is that? And really being able to ask that question and genuinely think about the answer, right? Because it could be that it's not important and you just don't care. But it could be that you're nervous about it. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously you're not nervous about cleaning your car, but other things that you maybe
But the other
continually
stuff,
put off.
Yeah.
Could be because you're afraid that you're not going to do it well, or that something's going to go wrong. It could be that you want to do it differently than people expect you to do it, or you don't know how, and you're not sure how to figure it out. But having somebody that will ask you those questions, and again, I don't have the answer,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to ask the question and then we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. The self-reflecting on that is probably the most important thing to figure out why and then how to address, I'm guessing. Yeah.
And I know just, again, for me personally, I was busy. I had, 2 kids. I was in executive leadership at a corporation. I traveled a lot for work. I mean, I didn't have time to be introspective and do that self-reflection until I made an appointment with a coach. It was on their calendar, and I had blocked off that hour. Like, I was not going to sit down and answer those questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you go about deciphering, like you mentioned, like, this might not be important to me. This is someone else's, like, this is important to someone else and not myself, versus like, this is valuable input that I need to take seriously, and maybe that I'm not seeing that
That's a good
it is
question.
important. I just might not be seeing it right.
Right.
Or in just sifting through like what actually is important.
I mean, so the question would be, if you were to do this, which one of those values, those core values that you've identified as super important to you, which one of those values is reflected in you having done this? Or which one is not being reflected by you having not done this task, right? Because if the answer is, like, if you want to be a person who is, I can't think of a good example at the moment. If you want to be somebody that is honest, right? And just being honesty is one of your core values. And you need to have a hard conversation with somebody and be honest with them. And you keep putting that off, right? Then you can ask yourself, am I being dishonest because I haven't faced this thing? You know, am I being dishonest with them or dishonest with myself because I haven't had this conversation? And so I think when you can relate the thing, whatever that thing is, back to one of your core values and either say, you know what, this has nothing to do with my core values, so then maybe this isn't quite so important to me. Or if you say, you know what, this is like directly related to something I'm saying is very important to me, and I'm not living with integrity and being the person that I've said I want to be if I am continually ignoring this thing.
I know that we're really excited about implementing this into Empire, and you being able to like help like navigate some of these things with clients. And like
I'm
I said
excited.
Like I said before, like we're really big on like creating lasting change, and I think this is going to be part of that. It's like anybody can lose 20 pounds, and there's a ton of ways to do it, but setting goals and creating changes that are going to like set your whole life in a different trajectory and like become the person you're wanting to be is really important. And I think that you're going to be an integral part of like how we accomplish that here. And so really
I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun when, you know, you've got clients that are obviously motivated to improve their health. And I mean, I am a life coach. I'm not a personal trainer. So, the partnership is going to be fantastic because where you guys can tell the clients, what exercises to do and how often, what to eat, right? I'm going to be able to step in and say, okay, what's your stated goal? How can we implement these things? Like, what does your schedule look like? What challenges can we anticipate ahead of time and already have a game plan to overcome them? And then those regular check-ins, like how's it going? What's working well? What's not working well? And where do we need to make adjustments so that you get the best possible results out of the time and the energy that you've invested in your health? I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, especially whenever you hit all angles of life, being it fitness, life coaching, we're doing finance as well. Like all those angles being able to be hit takes off all the stress from, oh, I put all my eggs in this basket, but now these are being separated. I'm not in control of that. So we're being able to hit all angles and really help people succeed and develop these awesome habits that will just help out in life in general.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've said for years, participating and now leading masterminds, is that whenever I have a specific goal that I'm actively working on in an area of my life that I'm trying to improve, every other area of my life improves as well, right? Because I bring my A game every day, and it spills over into things that I wasn't even working on. You know, yes, those were goals, but they weren't my focus, but I'm still going to make improvements there, and that's always really cool.
Yeah.
Right. I think, and we literally talked about this the last episode about like how it bleeds over. Like if you get your fitness under control, you now then have more energy to put to other things, or like if time management's a problem, if you start working on time management, all of a sudden you have an hour to work out and you can start working on your fitness. And these things there's like, when you get one part of your house in order, it helps get all the other pieces together, and they kind of start falling, and you feel like, okay, now I've got some momentum and we're moving the right way.
Things don't feel so overwhelming where you're just like, I don't even know how to control anything now. Just like not cleaning a car for 7 years.
It just spiraled for 7 years, you know?
I mean, my car's not very clean either, so it's like my favorite thing about...
I'm going to throw up a picture on this podcast of
whatever,
car, just to let people know what we're working on.
I'm married now, so I have.
You're married.
What is that supposed to mean? You're a
I have
grown
someone to clean my
man.
car now.
That's why I got married.
Okay, listen.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this was really good.
This time of your day, we're really excited about
Yeah,
this.
super cool.
Sweet. Bye.
Bye.